Order, please. Begin the day routine presenting reading petitions. Oh, the honourable member for Hants East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to introduce a petition. The operative clause, the residents of the King and Crossroads, Upper Kennecook, would like to complain about the road conditions, and immediate repair of these roads is needed ASAP. And Mr. Speaker, I've affixed my signature to a total of 49.
Presenting reports of committees. Tabling reports, regulations, and other papers. Statements by ministers. Government notice to motion. The Honourable Deputy Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. Mr. Speaker. Yes, you're back down here again. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move adoption of the following resolution. Whereas during the first weekend each May, the valiant efforts of our military in the Battle of the Atlantic is commemorated, and whereas 4,234 Canadian sailors, airmen, and merchant marines lost their lives during the Second World War battle to maintain the shipping routes between North America and Europe, and whereas this weekend is not only a time for remembrance of those who perished during the battle, but it is also time to say goodbye to those who have since passed away. With the HMCS Sackville commissioned to assist with the committal of the ashes of 13 veterans and 2 of the spouses. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House stand for a moment of silence to remember the fallen and those brave military personnel who participated in such a critical battle of World War II and whose remains now lie at rest in the waters of the Atlantic, bringing, as one said, a sailor's life full circle. And Mr. Speaker, I move requesting waiver and passage without debate, and also for a moment of silence.
Is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. I ask all members to rise for a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Please be seated. The Honourable Minister responsible for Acadian Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Monsieur le Président, une date ultérieure, j'ai l'intention de proposer l'adoption de la résolution suivante. Attendu qu'à chaque année, l'Université Sainte-Anne honore la contribution de quelques personnes dans les domaines particuliers en leur décernant chacun un doctorat honorifique. Et attendu que cette année, l'Université Sainte-Anne a choisi de reconnaître Neil Leblanc de Wedgeport pour son travail exceptionnel dans l'administration des affaires publiques et surtout dans plusieurs dossiers qui touchent la communauté acadienne. Et attendu que M. Leblanc a reçu le grade de docteur en administration publique honoris causa à l'occasion de la cérémonie de la collation des diplômes de l'Université Sainte-Anne le samedi le 1er mai. Qu'il soit résolu que cette Assemblée transmette ses plus chaleureuses félicitations à M. Leblanc et remercie pour sa contribution à la province et au développement de la communauté acadienne. Mr. Speaker, I'll do this in English as well. Whereas each year, University St. Anne recognizes the contribution of individuals in special fields of activity by awarding each an honorary doctorate degree. And whereas this year, University St. Anne has chosen to honor Neil LeBlanc of Wedgeport for his exceptional work in public administration and especially his achievements related to the Acadian community. And whereas Mr. LeBlanc received an honorary doctorate in public administration at the convocation ceremonies at University of St. Anne Saturday, May 1st, Therefore, be it resolved that this House congratulates Neil LeBlanc and thank him for his long-standing work and commitment to the province and to the development of the Acadian community. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Request for waivers is agreed. All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Environment and Labour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the goal of the Occupational Health and Safety Division of Nova Scotia Environment and Labour is to improve health and safety in the workplace, and whereas the week of May 2nd through May 8th has been designated as North American Occupational Safety and Health Week all across the continent, and whereas North American Occupational Safety and Health Week is intended to increase understanding and raise awareness of occupational health and safety issues among employees, employers, and the public, therefore be it resolved that we acknowledge the official opening of North American Occupational Safety and Health Week in Nova Scotia, which took place at 11 a.m. today, May 3rd, at the Grand Parade in Halifax, and encourage all employees, employers, and the general public to take part in this week's events. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Request for waivers is agreed. All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable the Deputy Premier.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move adoption of the following resolution. Whereas motorcycles are a popular form of transportation and recreation for more than 12,000 Nova Scotians, and whereas more than 1,100 motorcyclists learn to ride responsibly every year through the efforts of the Nova Scotia Safety Council, and whereas it's important for all motorists to be aware of motorcycles, their drivers and passengers, and unite in the safe sharing of roadways throughout the province, therefore be it resolved that this House proclaim the month of May to be Motorcycle Awareness Month and urge all citizens to join in this effort to keep our roads safe. And Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Request for waivers is agreed. All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Environment and Labour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm reading this resolution on behalf of my colleague, the Minister of Natural Resources. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas May 2nd to 8th is National Forest Week, a week observed annually that provides an opportunity for all Nova Scotians and Canadians to learn more about their forest heritage and to support greater recognition of its valuable resources. And whereas the theme of the week this year, Canada's Forests, A Fine Balance, focuses on the more than 70,000 wildlife species that depend on our ecosystems for survival and which have seen a significant decline in habitat. And whereas we want to ensure that our forest continues to shelter wildlife, safeguard watersheds, provide soil stability, and protect countless other values, therefore be it resolved that members of this House recognize the importance of our forests to the environment and to wildlife it supports by taking time to walk through the woods and enjoy all that it has to offer. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Request for waivers is agreed. All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Environment and Labour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas water is a basic and essential need for every living being, and whereas our health, comfort, and standard of living depend upon an abundant supply of safe drinking water, and whereas we are calling on all Nova Scotians to help protect our source water from pollution, practice water conservation, and get involved in local water issues, therefore be it resolved that all members of this House join with me as we celebrate Drinking Water Week in Nova Scotia from May 2nd to May 8th, 2004. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver and passage without debate.
Request for waivers is agreed. All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister responsible for the Emergency Measures Organization.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas there are many memories from the blizzard of 2004, and whereas one of those memories involves the member from Chester St. Margaret's who trudged through waist-deep snow to deliver medicine to 19-month-old Madison Miller of Sim Settlement, Lunenburg County, who had a temperature of 39.9 Celsius, and whereas the member from Chester St. Margaret's walked 45 minutes through large snow drifts to deliver this medicine when all other delivery methods had been exhausted. Therefore, be it resolved, MLAs applaud the heroic efforts of the member from Chester St. Margaret's, who was described by Ms. Miller, the mother, as the kind of MLA who went above and beyond the call of duty. And I request waiver.
Motion waivers and agreed. All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. Introduction of bills. The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the Minister of Justice to introduce an act to amend Chapter 1 of the Revised Statutes of 1989, the House of Assembly Act.
The Honourable Minister begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 1 of the 1992 Supplement of the Revised Statutes 1989, the House of Assembly Act.
Bill 67, entitled Act to Amend Chapter 1, 1992 Supplement of the Revised Statutes 1989, the House of Assembly Act.
Order this bill be read a second time at a future date. The Honourable Minister. The Honourable Minister of Education.
On behalf of my colleague, the Minister of Justice, to introduce an act to implement the Convention on International Interest in Mobile Equipment in matters specific to aircraft equipment.
The Honourable Minister begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Implement the Convention on International Interest in Mobile Equipment in matters specific to aircraft equipment.
Bill 68, entitled An Act to Implement the Convention on International Interests in Mobile Equipment in matters specific to aircraft equipment.
Order this bill be read a second time at a future date. The Honourable Member for Colchester-Muscatawbet Valley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to make an introduction in concert with this piece of legislation. In your gallery, Mr. Speaker, I would like to recognize and acknowledge the presence of two very important members of the United Way of the Halifax region, and I would ask that the Vice Chair of the Board of Directors, Mr. Peter Doig, and Evelyn Barkhouse, the Director of Operations with the United Way of Halifax region, stand and receive a polite applause from members of the legislature. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to introduce a bill, an act to amend Chapter 73 of the Acts of 1972, an act to incorporate the Halifax-Dartmouth United Appeal.
The Honourable Member for Colchester-Muscatawbet Valley begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 73 of the Acts of 1972, an act to incorporate the Halifax-Dartmouth United Appeal.
Bill 69, entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 73 of the Acts of 1972, an act to incorporate the Halifax-Dartmouth United Appeal.
Order this bill be read a second time at a future date. Notice of motion. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the pride of Hopewell, Pictou County, country music performer and songwriter George Canyon placed second in the competition for Nashville Country Star title this weekend in Nashville, Tennessee. And whereas George Canyon has joined other famous artists such as Garth Brooks and Shania Twain by signing with the same major management company and agency, and whereas George Canyon's strong performance has opened many promising doors, providing him with opportunities to create songs with other well-established writers and putting him in a strong position to line up a major record deal and secure future television performances. Therefore, be it resolved that this House join all Nova Scotians in extending our congratulations to George Canyon on his stellar performance and wish him and his family all the best as he pursues his dream for much success in the country music industry. And Mr. Speaker, I would request waiver and passage without debate.
Request for waivers. Is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Member for Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Joseph Howe is one of the most important figures in the history of Nova Scotia and of this House, and whereas on this date, in 1835, Joseph Howe won the case for freedom of the press in the Supreme Court of Nova Scotia, now the Legislative Library, where he was tried for libel for printing accusations of government corruption in his newspaper, the Nova Scotian. And whereas Joseph Howe went on to serve his province as leader of the Liberal Party, Premier, Member of Parliament, and Lieutenant Governor, therefore be it resolved that this House honour the memory of Joseph Howe by upholding the ideals that he stood for and by ensuring that government remains open and accessible and accountable to the public, and that our freedom of information legislation is the best in Canada. Mr. Speaker, I would ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question waivers, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Pictou East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas George Canyon of Hopewell, Pictou County was given a chance to showcase his incredible talent and personality to millions through the 10-week program Nashville Star. And whereas Canyon's family and friends spent countless hours supporting George and his quest to share his love for music. And whereas despite placing second in the formal competition, he is #1 with Nova Scotians and has already signed on with the same individual who manages Garth Brooks and Shania Twain. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House, and indeed all Nova Scotians, congratulate George Canyon on his success and join with his family and friends in wishing him all the best as he continues to capture the hearts of country music fans worldwide, and I seek waiver of notice.
Request for waivers, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Halifax Needham.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas today, World Press Freedom Day, a day set aside to pay tribute to those who make sacrifices to bring us the news, and we remember the 53 journalists around the world who lost their lives last year while trying to get at the truth. And whereas, to quote Nobel laureate Amartya Sen, journalists provide a voice to the neglected and disadvantaged while simultaneously preventing governments from insulating themselves from public criticism. And whereas a free press is vital to the strength of democratic governments, including our own here in Nova Scotia, therefore be it resolved that members of this House recognize the hard work, determination, and sacrifices made by journalists the world over. I seek waiver and passage without debate, Mr. Speaker.
Request for waivers, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Halifax Clayton Park.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the 6th annual Rebels with a Cause award ceremony to be held on May 8th will honor the work of 5 outstanding women in the community, and this event helps raise essential funds for the continuation of advocacy services and vital programs which the Elizabeth Fry Society offers in the community to women and families. And whereas each of these women have contributed in a wide variety of ways, working in their communities on social issues, human rights, and equality for women and their families, and whereas this year's honorees are Rosemary Brooks, East Preston community worker, Kathy Love, children and women's advocate, Maureen McDonald, social worker and MLA for Halifax Needham, Sister Mary Morris, educator and social justice advocate, and Philippa Pictou, community development activist. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of the House acknowledge the tremendous work of these women and all others who work together every day within their communities and extend best wishes to them. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Request for waivers, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Waverley Fall River Beaverbank.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas as a result of a dramatic rescue less than 2 years ago, Don Burgess, Jeff Winters, Patty Hilchey, Mark Hoadley, and David Hill have all received the Governor General's Certificate of Commendation. And whereas the dramatic rescue took place near Waverley, where Shelley Yates and her 4-year-old son Evan hydroplaned in their car and landed in a flooded marsh. And whereas Winters, Hoadley, Hilchey, and Hill immediately pulled over upon seeing the car and dove in the water. But after rescuing Evan's mother but not being able to find Evan anywhere, Mr. Burgess got a boom truck to pull the car up from the water. Therefore, be it resolved that all MLAs of this House recognize the heroic and selfless efforts demonstrated by Jeff Winters, Patty Hilchey, Mark Hoadley, David Hill, and Don Burgess, and congratulate them on receiving their honour from the Governor General of Canada. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice.
Request for waivers, is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Cole Harbour Eastern Passage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Lana Grant is an independent singer-songwriter, recording artist who has released 2 CDs on her own record label, Granted Records. Whereas Lana Grant has appeared at the ECMAs, ECMAs, opened for Blue Rodeo, and has played to support local charities such as the Metro Food Bank and Phoenix Youth Programs. Whereas Ms. Grant released her most recent album, Hovering Above, in January. Therefore, be it resolved that this House congratulate Lana Grant and wish her great success with her second CD titled Hovering Above and all of her future endeavors. I ask for waiver, Mr. Speaker.
Question for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Annapolis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Annapolis Valley Campus Center of Geographic Sciences held their spring convocation on Saturday, May 1st, 2004, and whereas the President's Award is awarded to a graduating student of a college certificate program who has demonstrated outstanding academic achievement and contributed to campus and/or community activities, and whereas Keith Cox, a graduate of the Survey Technician program, was the recipient of the President's Award, therefore be it resolved that all members of this House congratulate Keith Cox and all graduates of this fine Nova Scotia institution. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver.
Question for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Colchester and Muscatawbet Valley.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I will be requesting waiver notice. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas 33-year-old Scott Fraser, a 4-time stock car racing champion who died suddenly in the early morning hours of March 20th following a snowmobile accident, whereas May 29th will be the opening day for the 2004 race season at Scotia Speed World, with the entire day being marked as a tribute to Scott Fraser, whereas Scott was considered to be one, if not the best stock car racer anywhere in Canada, and was a second-generation driver, son of widely known maritime stock car racing legend Frank Fraser. Therefore, be it resolved that all MLAs in this House expressed our deepest sorrow and extend our heartfelt sympathies to parents Frank and Grace, brother Frank Jr., sister-in-law Tricia, and his niece and nephew, knowing Scott will always be with you no matter where you go or what you do. And Mr. Speaker, I request waiver notice.
Question for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Hants East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas on Saturday, May 1st, friends and family gathered at St. Andrew's United Church Hall in Halifax to celebrate the 100th birthday of Dr. Wilfred Creighton. And whereas returning from studies abroad in 1934, Mr. Creighton brought forestry practices he learned in Germany to his work in the Department of Lands and Forests, serving as deputy minister from 1949 until he retired in 1969, during which time he was responsible for numerous demonstration projects and the negotiation of 500,000 acres for the Crown. And whereas Mr. Creighton's forward-thinking forestry management expertise is still appropriate today and is evident in his own 1,450-acre woodlot, Christmas tree growing and saw log operations, and in his Millennium Project, a sugar maple operation. Therefore, be resolved that members of this Legislative Assembly extend warm birthday greetings to centenarian Wilfred Creighton on the occasion of his 100th birthday on Wednesday, May 5th, with best wishes for health and happiness for many years to come. And Mr. Speaker, I request waiver notice and passage without debate.
Question for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Glace Bay.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas May 3rd to the 9th, 2004 is Mental Health Week across Canada, and whereas this national awareness campaign provides Canadians with many opportunities to find out more about the importance of mental health, and whereas this year's theme, Making Connections, reinforces the message that reaching out and making connections with families, groups, and decision makers is the first step toward well-being. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House congratulate the staff and volunteers at the Canadian Mental Health Association for their dedication and efforts not only during Mental Health Week but throughout the entire year. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Kings North.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas members of the Kentville Lodge number 58 recently met to honour the first master, Dr. Henri Shaw, and members who have attained 25, 50 and 60 years of service. And whereas Jack Lord was the recipient of his Master Mason certificate, and William Haynes was presented his past master certificate for serving as Master of the Lodge in 2002. And whereas others recognized for long-time service to the Lodge were Barry Gibson, Scott Gibson, David Waterbury, and Donald Cameron Keith. Therefore, be it resolved that the members of this House congratulate the members of the Kentville Lodge on their recent awards and recognize their many years of service to the organization. I request waiver.
Question for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Halifax, Shabakto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will be seeking waiver. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas we note with sorrow the passing of Dr. Ian Stewart Robb at the age of 87 on April 27, 2004. And whereas Dr. Robb had a distinguished career of public service, including being a medic with the Canadian Army during World War II, as a medical missionary in China, and a physician aiding war refugees in South Korea in association with the United Church. And whereas Dr. Robb was known for his dedicated support of human rights and social justice organizations, in later years focusing on the negative effects of video gambling, therefore be it resolved that the members of this House express their sympathy to the family of the late Dr. Ian Stewart Robb upon the occasion of his passing. Mr. Speaker, I seek waiver of notice, passage without debate.
Question for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Leader of the Liberal Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Tina Camo wrote a 6-part series, Searching for Answers, examining 8 high-profile unsolved crimes, and whereas Tina Camo is a reporter with the Yarmouth Vanguard, which published the series last fall, and whereas the Canadian Community Newspaper Association has named Tina Camo one of 3 finalists in the Best Feature Series category, circulation 4,000 to 12,499 in their annual awards program. Therefore, it would be resolved that all members of this House congratulate Tina Camo on her accomplishment and wish her good luck on June the 5th when the award winners are named at the CCNA National Convention. And, Mr. Speaker, I would ask for waiver, please.
Question for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Chester St. Margaret's.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Building Healthier Future Corporate Award recognizes a corporation that has made significant contributions through support and encouragement of employee volunteerism or shown corporate support for community initiatives, and whereas Chester Save Easy has been selected as this year's Building Healthier Futures Corporation of 2004 for its dedicated support of local organizations such as the Lions Club, the Chester Legion, the Chester Food Bank, the Chester Family Centre, and the Warehouse Youth Centre, just to name a few. And whereas store owners Danny and Joanne McCool had a policy in place that encourages staff to volunteer by offering incentives and a flexible work schedule. Therefore, be it resolved that the members of this House commend Chester Save Easy owners Danny and Joanne McCool for their many efforts to encourage volunteerism among their employees and all the contributions they made to their community, and congratulate them on winning the Building Healthier Futures Corporate Award for 2004. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice.
Question waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Halifax Atlantic.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Central Spryfield Elementary School on the Herring Cove Road held its first ever spring fair on April the 24th after nearly 50 years of existence. Whereas the children of Central Spryfield have set up a knitting club and have since Christmas knitted, baked, made jam, apple dolls and forced flowering bulbs for sale. And whereas every nook and cranny of the school was bursting with games, students, parents and teachers on the day of the fair. Therefore, be it resolved, this House congratulate Principal Connie Potty, her staff, and all the children and parents of Central Spryfield on the splendid success of their fair, and wish them luck with many more in the future. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Halifax Clayton Park.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Maggie's Place is offering a variety of parenting classes to help parents with children from preschool to teenagers. And whereas these courses will be offered free of charge and will range from, hey, who's in charge workshops for parents with teens, to workshops on pregnancy resources, on how to care for yourself and your baby. And whereas the 7-week low-cost nutritional program will also assist parents to provide nutritional, well-balanced meals for their families. Therefore, be it resolved that members of this legislature acknowledge the contributions Maggie's Place makes to improving the lives of families. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Question for waiver is agreed. All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Education. Honourable Member Colchester North.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Now, Minister of Education, back to where I started.
Mr. Speaker, whereas on May the 1st, 2004, more than 325 motorcyclists, along with their passengers, attended the 16th annual Bike Blessing Service in Truro. And whereas May is the beginning of the beginning month of Nova Scotia's motorcycle riding season, and whereas motorcycles are a less conspicuous motor vehicle, and thus increased awareness will improve safety habits and help prevent injuries. Therefore, be it resolved that this House encourage the public to increase its awareness of motorcycles and wish all motorcyclists an enjoyable and accident-free riding season. I now request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Order, please. Question for waivers, agreed. All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Member for Pictou West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Pictou County Rivers Association held a successful fishing and outdoor recreation expo this past Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at the New Glasgow Stadium, and whereas exhibitors from throughout northern Nova Scotia were on hand displaying a variety of recreation and fishing products, as well as federal and provincial fisheries officers answering questions from the public, and whereas all monies raised by the Pictou County Rivers Association go towards river and stream maintenance and other conservation activities. Therefore, it be resolved that the members of this legislature congratulate the Pictou County Rivers Association on another successful show and wish them continued success in the future. And Mr. Speaker, I request waiver and passage without debate.
Waivers are agreed. All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Member for Digby-Annapolis.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Digby bar owner Robin Smith is no longer allowing video lottery terminals in his establishment, and whereas Robin Smith wants other local bars to follow his example because of the negative effect gambling addiction had on some of his patrons. Whereas gambling addiction is a problem that affects the lives of countless Nova Scotians. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House congratulate Robin Smith for taking a stand and not letting the need of profit outweigh the destruction of people's lives gambling addiction can cause. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of passage without debate.
Question for waivers, that agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I give notice on a future day I shall move adoption of the following resolution. Whereas, under the selfless leadership of Mel Boutlier, the Parker Street Food and Furniture Bank has provided help to those with needs in Halifax since 1983, and whereas Parker Street Food and Furniture Bank is now providing training programs that are helping people get skills needed for meaningful employment, whereas Parker Street Food Bank has just completed a successful fundraiser to provide funds for their clients' needs. Therefore, be it resolved, all members of this House wish Mel Boutlier and the Parker Street Furniture Bank success as they work to help those with needs in Halifax. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver and passage without debate.
Question for waivers, that agreed? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Member for Cape Breton Nova.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas for the third time in the past 4 years, Ness Timmins, coach of the UCCB women's soccer team, was named Atlantic University Sport Coach of the Year. And whereas Coach Timmins has guided his team to of dedicated young athletes to 4 consecutive divisional titles. And whereas Coach Timmins was also a member of the coaching staff of the World University Games held in Korea. Therefore, be it resolved that the members of this Legislative Assembly congratulate Ness Timmins for his commitment and dedication to the UCCB soccer program, thereby reinforcing UCCB's place on the athletics map. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Request for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Halifax Citadel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Joseph Howe became known to Nova Scotians as a speaker for the rights of people when he got to his feet and spoke in this very legislature for 6.5 hours on liberty and the need for freedom of the press. Whereas today, May 3rd, 2004, thousands of journalists around the world are commemorating World Press Freedom Day. And whereas last year, 53 journalists worldwide died while working to promote truth, liberty, and fairness. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of the legislature celebrate the importance of freedom of the press, especially in those societies whose journey toward recovery and stability are beset with uncertainty, and applaud the brave men and women who bring us news despite obvious risks and danger. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Request for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Africville Lakers captured the Bantam Men's Division I Basketball Championship earlier this month, and whereas Coach David Carvery and his team worked very hard this year to come out ahead against other very formidable teams, and whereas Coach Carvery will continue to be the coach for the next season and will hopefully duplicate his efforts. Therefore, be it resolved, all members of this House join with me in congratulating Coach David Carvery and the Africville Lakers on their recent Bantam Men's Division I Basketball Championship. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Request for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Taekwondo is an artistic discipline whose techniques are done with powerful and graceful movements, developing strength, flexibility, endurance, speed, balance, coordination, and self-control. And whereas Master Brian Wong opened Wong's Taekwondo in Sackville less than a year ago, instructing his students in tenets of martial arts, courtesy, integrity, perseverance, self-control, and strong spirit. And whereas Wong's Taekwondo students, Lawson Gillespie, Shauna Goodwin, Michael Porter, Marley Porters, competed with more than 350 other competitors from across Canada on Friday, April 30th at the Canadian Junior National Taekwondo Championships at the Dartmouth Sportsplex. Therefore, be it resolved that members of the Legislative Assembly congratulate Coach Brian Wong, students Lawson Gillespie, Shauna Goodwin, Michael Porter, Marley Porters, on their outstanding performance at the Canadian Junior National Taekwondo Championships held this past weekend, winning 1 gold and 4 silver medals in the colored belt division, and wish them future successful successions as they continue the training. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Request for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Glace Bay.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas May 3rd to the 9th is National Hospice Palliative Care Week, and whereas hospice palliative care programs allow patients to gain more control of their lives, manage pain and symptoms more effectively, and provide support to informal caregivers. Whereas this week's theme, Caregiving, the many gifts that all caregivers bring, celebrates, recognizes, and shares the achievements of hospice palliative care professionals, family and friends, and communities throughout our province. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of the legislature acknowledge the tremendous work of palliative care workers, family caregivers, and volunteers in our province, and work together to ensure that hospice palliative care is given the resources to provide services within our health care structure. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Request for waiver, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Timberlea Prospect.
Mr. Speaker, I'll be asking for waiver and passage without debate. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Lakeside volunteer firefighter Gary Myra has led the initiative to raise funds for the Nova Scotia Firefighters Burn Treatment Society, and whereas Gary and the workers of the Lakeside Fire Hall Bingo have raised $2,600 through their efforts, and whereas this money will be used to assist burn victims with their recovery, therefore be it resolved that the Nova Scotia Legislature congratulate and thank Gary Myra and the members of the Lakeside Volunteer Fire Department for their continuing dedication to fundraising for the Nova Scotia Firefighters Burn Treatment Society. I ask for waiver and passage without debate, Mr. Speaker.
Request for waivers, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Preston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas on May 2nd to the 8th is National Forest Week, and the theme this year is Canada's Forests. And whereas the forests contribute greatly to the economy, health, and traditions of Nova Scotia. Whereas Nova Scotia has a long history of forest industries and economic growth while trying to maintain a balance with nature. Therefore, it be resolved that all members of this House encourage the people of Nova Scotia to continue and take part in the various activities planned for this very special day, and urge the government to ensure that the beauty of our province is maintained while encouraging sustainable forest practices. And I'd ask for waiver.
Request for waivers, is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. Order, please. Just before we go to orders of the day, there's been a request to revert back to presenting reading petitions. Is it agreed? Agreed. The honourable member for Glace Bay on presenting reading petitions.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to table a petition on behalf of the Antigonish Diocesan Catholic Women's League. The petition was sent to the Health Minister, and it calls on the government to immediately fund the establishment of a methadone clinic in the Cape Breton area. Mr. Speaker, the petition is signed by some 200 people, and I have affixed my signature to it as well.
Petition is tabled. Orders of the day, government business, the honourable government House Leader.
Speaker, I move that you do now leave the chair and the House resolve in the committee of the whole House on supply.
The honourable member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to make mention of some concerns that have been brought to my attention over the last 9 months or so from my community of Sackville. And as I go through some of them, we'll realize that most of these concerns aren't just limited to my area. They affect the surrounding areas and I'm sure affect a lot of the communities throughout Nova Scotia. Concerns that were brought to me not only through the election, but afterwards. And they're still being brought up to me on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, to my constituent office and passed along to me. So I thought it was time that I could bring some of these forward.
Wonderful. Good idea. Good idea.
Things like skyrocketing car insurance, skyrocketing house insurance now, Mr. Speaker, skyrocketing user fees, other conditions, or the conditions of some of the schools in my area. Healthcare is a big concern for many of the residents, especially emergency room wait times and waiting times for specialist appointments. But we're not just part of the concerns that I'm hearing are not just from older adults, but from youth in my community. A lot of the youth are becoming more aware of what's happening in the province and different events that take place throughout the community and the effects of user fees, car insurance. Some of the concerns they have as the older residents of my community is skyrocketing car insurance, skyrocketing tuition, skyrocketing user fees for schools. So as you can see, a lot of these concerns, I use the word skyrocketing because that's what these individuals and residents in my community are saying the state of these concerns are. These topics, most of them deal with monetary funds or expenses on their behalf, and they're finding it very difficult for them to make ends meet. So I just want to talk a little bit about the car insurance. As you're aware, last year there was a legislation brought in to reduce car insurance for the people of our province, and it was a 20% reduction in the rates. Which is great. I got to applaud anything to reduce car insurance is a good thing. But the problem I've been hearing from is a lot of the residents' insurance have gone up 60, 70, 80, even 90% over the last several years, Mr. Speaker. And a 20% reduction is a small portion of what their increases have been over the years. So they're still seeing a large portion of their income every month going to auto insurance. A lot of the people that talk to me do pay their insurance on insurance rates on a monthly basis, so it comes out of their monthly income, and they're really finding it difficult. A lot of them are selling vehicles and selling them because they can't afford the insurance on them, and they're needed in their families to enable them to travel to work or get their kids to schools or go to functions, extracurricular activities, and now they're relying on other means of transportation. The other big concern that has been brought up to me, especially over the last 9 months, is the increase in auto or house insurance. Many residents in my community have called indicating that their insurance rates for their homes have doubled at times. There are several incidences that bring to mind over the last 9 months that they have doubled, and this is really being hard on their, it's hard on their monthly income with the auto insurance to pay for these home insurance costs. So that's been a big concern of many of the homeowners in my community, and they're wondering if the trend is going to continue as we've seen with the auto insurance over the last several years with the house insurance. So I think as legislation potentials down the road would be maybe to address something like this. As an elected official, I think it's important for us to make sure that our residents are being dealt with adequately by corporations or companies, especially insurance companies, and we need to really take a look at the trend that's been going on over the last several months, if not several years, in house insurance. So I think that's something we need to really look at over the next year or so and see if we can help alleviate some of these increased costs for our residents because they too are finding it hard to insure their homes. Another concern is some of the user fees that the residents have been paying over the last several years. And I always revert back to life experiences and of course, past professions, as you're aware, Mr. Speaker, working as a paramedic in the province and pretty much working most of my career in my community where I live and where I grow up and the community that I represent now in this legislature. And user fees, the ambulance user fees has been a big deterrence for residents to call for an ambulance. You would be amazed on how often I have to convince someone to go to the hospital, and they're worried about how much the user fee is. And paramedics in the province are quite honest to patients when they go and assess them and see their needs and determine if they need to continue on to the hospital or not. And I've always practiced that if the condition warrants, the patient should be seen by a physician or seen in an ER. So I encourage patients to not worry about the user fee at that time and to come with us and seek medical attention and go to the hospital and get checked. But it's been numerous times now over the last several years that this has come up. Not only the user fee, but the increase in your auto insurance on some of the motor vehicle accidents that I go to. People are very afraid that they will have such a huge increase on their motor vehicle insurance or their coverage once they claim for a user fee, because in this province, user fees, the cost of an ambulance trip to the hospital is over $600. And if you were to fall down outside, let's say, and fracture your leg, and you're taken to the hospital by an ambulance, your user fee is $120 now. But if you're in a vehicle or you're a passenger in a vehicle, you get the brunt of the total cost for that trip. So you actually get a bill for the $600. And you're supposed to approach your insurance company or whoever's insurance company's vehicle you're under or you're in, a passenger in, and they're supposed to cover the cost of that. But many people are afraid to even pay or go and see their broker and say that they have an insurance bill, because one, they'll ask, why do you have an insurance bill? Well, they'll say, because I've been in a motor vehicle accident. Even though maybe they're paying out of pocket maybe they're paying out of pocket for their
The Honourable Member for Sackville-Cobequid has the floor.
You pay attention to you. You know what you're talking
Thank
about.
you, Mr. Speaker.
You remember those demonstrations in here?
A lot of
They were
people
over
will
there.
pay out of their pocket
They were over
for
there
the
not paying
damage done to their
attention then either.
vehicle. So they're afraid to put in the claim for their ambulance bill because the insurance companies may question there might be damage to their vehicle, and they're truly afraid of the increased cost of their auto insurance. So along the line of auto insurance, the youth in my community are paying a fortune to get their vehicles insured or be part of their family's insurance package. On a personal note, my spouse works in the financial in a financial institute and actually is a loans officer. And most times now, she witnesses young people coming in to get their first loan on a vehicle. And one of her first questions is, "How much is your insurance?" And they have to make arrangements with her or make proof that they have insurance on the vehicle. And sometimes the insurance costs more than the price of the vehicle. So the young people in our communities are finding it hard to get their first vehicle and get it insured to enable them to maintain their studies, say if they're coming from Sackville into Halifax to go to university. The cost incurred for this is increasing dramatically over the last several years. That brings me to the next concern that they have is the tuition and the cost of tuition nowadays for the youth, especially in my community. A lot of them do travel back and forth. They don't stay on campus. They travel back and forth. They don't live in the residence, and they need vehicles. And they tie both of them in very closely with the decision on if they should seek or if they should extend their education by going to a secondary institute or a college or a university in town, and they determine the factor is can they get there, for one? Is the cost of insuring their vehicle or the cost of tuition, which we all are aware has risen dramatically even since the early 90s when I attended St. Mary's. It was something of a transition for me to go to university and to try to figure out what I was going to do. And nowadays, it's hard for a youth to say, I'm just going to go to university to keep my options open because of the cost involved in this. The parents are supporting, or the parents that do support the youth or their kids to go on to university or college. It's a big expense when they're not too sure what the end results or what their end career is going to be. So that's a big factor in deciding if they're going to go to university. The other thing is the school fees paid now when you attend school, such as high school, elementary school, junior high. The reports last week in the news said HRM alone brung in nearly $20 million in user fees for school fees. I know Sackville High is in the range of $300,000 to $400,000 they take in for user fees. Now, these are fees that students have to pay for their lockers, for sports teams, not only just one sport team, but if you play on 3 sports teams, you have to pay $35 for each sports team. So here are students, especially nowadays with the promotion of the health promotion office and trying to promote an active lifestyle for our youth, but yet we're penalizing them in our school systems if they choose to play one or more sports. It's a very hard burden for them to carry, and it's a burden for their families to carry on with all the increased costs in insurance for their vehicles, for their houses, for user fees, and it's very concerning for them. These increased costs that just continue to grow and grow. The next topic that a lot of my residents are concerned with is healthcare, and of course many people in this room have heard over the last several years, and it's always been a hot topic. Healthcare is important to pretty much everybody in this province and everybody in this country. And in Sackville, we've had the opportunity to seek some medical attention at the Cobequid Community Health Centre, which is a great facility that's been there for many years, and I've worked with the people there. I've brought patients in there over the years, and it's a great asset to have in our community. The Cobequid Community Health Center has a catchment area of over 100,000 people, Mr. Speaker. That's almost a quarter of the population of HRM use that facility or have the potential to use that facility. So over the years, I've realized bringing patients in there that the facility that's currently there, they've outgrown it many years ago. And there's a dire need to get this new community hospital open, and the community is fully behind it. They've been fundraising for years in this for the Cobequid Community Health Center Foundation. They've raised over $3 million to date, and the youth especially are committed to this facility with the 4 high schools around the area, Sackville High, Millwood High, CP Allen, and Lockview, committing $80,000 raised over the next several years for that foundation for the center. So everybody out there has been really working hard to get this center open and get it finished. And I think the Cobequid, the community, and our community, with the growth seen in the community and surrounding areas, Sackville deserves a 24-hour emergency room. A lot of people have concerns that when the new facility is open, that it's only going to be limited or the same hours that we have now. And I think with the commitment that the community has given to this facility over the years and the commitment they will continue to give, they really need to look at this opportunity to help alleviate some of the problems we see in the emergency rooms here in Halifax, because there is a crisis going on, Mr. Speaker, and I think the Cobequid Center out in Sackville can be a vital tool in addressing some of the issues here in the city. And I think by the growth out there that the people deserve to be have that issue addressed. And hopefully over the next several years that we can really sit down and take a strong look at this and really open this facility extended hours or even 24 hours. So I would just like to thank the community members and the people in my community that keep in touch with me and make sure that their concerns are brought to my attention and that I can bring them to the floor of the House of Assembly.
Good member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Good job.
Thank you. Recognize the honourable member for Preston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to speak about some of the problems that I have in my area with roads and some of the general things with the roads are a problem in the rural areas. We presently have a bridge to Candy Mountain on the Candy Mountain Road. It's one lane. It was fixed last year by the Department of Transportation. It just been recently derated down to 20 tons. Unfortunately, we're building a new home there. You can't get a gravel truck over it, fully loaded, cement mixer, and I'm not too sure about a fire truck at this point. Remember last year when they were working on the bridge, they stationed a fire truck on the far side of the bridge just in case they had a fire. And hopefully they'll be able to bring in the proper equipment now if they need to over the bridge without causing a problem. It's caused a great deal of difficulty for the people in the community and indeed will continue to create a problem in the community. Unfortunately, this is the only road in or out of the community, no other access. So if you need a vehicle in there that's loaded heavily for whatever reason, you just simply can't get it at the present time. You can't move a good-sized excavator, a bulldozer, or any of those sort of things that you may need to do some work around your property. Those are minor. If you can't get a fire truck in there and the fire truck isn't available, it's a serious problem. This is one of those old one-lane steel bridges that the government is committed to replace, but I don't know exactly when that's going to happen. Hopefully it's sooner than later. Then you look at some of the other roads in the East Preston area, between the 107 turnoff in East Preston down to Lake Echo, where it was paved by the Liberal government a few years ago from Lake Echo through to Porter's Lake. That road desperately needs repairs. It's full of potholes, extremely rough, and it's a main road through the community and definitely is not helping the economic growth of the community as it moves forward. But those are the things that have to be done. And you talk about potholes, which are a major problem this time of year. There needs to be a system put in place through the Department of Transportation that when a call is received regarding a complaint, there's a certain protocol that should be followed to repair the pothole, or indeed even a worse situation is a road sign. For instance, if a road sign is knocked down during winter maintenance, no fault of anyone's, but just it happens to get knocked down. Past, we've had to call the people within HRM to get a new sign supplied to the Department of Transportation to have the sign put back up again, and pointed out to senior staff at the Department of Transportation that they may be liable if someone dies because an ambulance can't find a person's home because there's no street number on it or street name on it. And that's gone on and on and on. Some of the signs have been down for over a year, and the last year we've managed to get a lot of them repaired using 911 as a reason. And the need to have fire and police and ambulances easily access to the community and to the residents. So that we definitely need to set a protocol for these things to have in place, and certain number of working days. And I think if I remember, the protocol they're supposed to be following is something like 27 working days from the time a sign is down. That's a poor thing to tell a father or mother that their child has a serious illness and the ambulance couldn't find them in 27 days' time. The sign will be put up, so that's not acceptable. I know some of the municipalities have a 5-day or 2-day turnaround in installing signs that are important for location of homes and properties. So you have to have that. It also needs to be put in place a system of documentation for complaints when it comes to calls going in. Typically now in the province, a call comes into the local garage, and usually the gentleman that answers the phone is usually quite cordial to get along with. However, sometimes the information doesn't get to the supervisor, or the supervisor claims it doesn't get there. I think this system should be set up with all the technology there is today, a central system that you call in, log your complaint, whether it be a pothole, a road sign, or whatever the case may be, to have the problem resolved, and then a certain protocol set in place at so many days or so many hours based on the urgency of the complaint, when the complaint can be satisfied. And a follow-up back to the constituent or the person that called, let them know that indeed it has been looked into, this is a standard process to getting this repaired, and in that time they have confidence that it will be happening. That isn't the case today, and I think that has to change. The other thing that has to happen, if you're going to have a protocol in place, or even the service they have now, the local crews have to have the resources. They have to have the equipment, they have to have the raw materials, and they have to have the crew members to do the work. And maintenance on our roads is so critical. If we don't have the proper maintenance done on our roads, it affects tourism, it affects businesses, it affects everybody. Leads to probably more accidents than would be, puts our insurance rates up, and generally deteriorates the value of our vehicles because they're beat to death on the roads. And you see the damage of that. I've got several calls this year from people that have had broken rims and suspension systems and fenders broken on their cars because they hit a pothole that wasn't marked, not even marked, never mind being repaired. On my own street, they did a really good job the other day putting some gravel in the potholes, and that lasted until the first rain, and then we got big potholes again. So it's been probably 2-3 months now since they've been there. I realized recently the weather hasn't been good, but it's got to get better to get these things fixed. Look at other areas that the roads need to be repaired. If you go from Lake Echo, where the roads have been paved about 5-6 years ago, in through the Porters Lake, the old number 7 highway, that needs to be repaired too. It's full of potholes, it's very, very rough, and very, very bad condition. Again, making it not very safe for people to travel and do the things they need every day when they're traveling back and forth to schools and to home and to their workplace, whatever the case may be. Other areas that we need, one road in particular needs immediate attention, and it's a gravel road. It's O'Connell Drive in Porters Lake. It's in deplorable condition continuously. It's a gravel road, and it goes to O'Connell Drive School. There's a lot of traffic there every day, school buses and parents going back and forth, service vehicles, and the holes in the road are so bad sometimes that you can't even drive around them, and you have to go up the road at extremely low speed, which is fine, and still hit the potholes and do damage to your vehicle. This is one road that has to be maintained. What if there was a fire at the school and they needed the fire trucks there in a hurry? The fire trucks simply cannot get there in a reasonable response time. So I believe that there has to be some consideration given to that road to see if it can't be brought up to some kind of standard, or at least graded on a regular basis, to make sure that the road is looked after and the residents get a reasonable level of service that should be expected on such a high traffic road. Again, it is an unusual situation where the subdivision isn't that big, but the traffic, tremendous amount of school buses every day, and cars and service vehicles such as oil trucks and other vehicles going up that road. So that road really does need some very special attention. We had to have it graded one time this year, and I thank the department for doing it quite promptly after they were requested, so that people could just simply get up and down the road. So that has to be rectified, and it has to be rectified in the very near future. Then we go into East Preston and Upper Governor Street. Well, in the summertime, in best possible conditions, and everything is there, it's almost impassable. It's a paved road. I don't think it's been repaired probably in 30, 40 years, and it definitely has to be repaired. You see the condition of the road and the poor condition it's in. It just makes me wonder why there isn't more damage to vehicles and the rest of it. And also, you don't see any growth in housing there. Nobody would build a home on this piece of property, even though it has road access maintained by the province. It definitely, you wouldn't want to build a home there. It's just simply in that bad a condition. And then if you move to the end of Upper Governor Street, where it continues on into North Preston, through East Preston, North Preston, on the connector road, that's been a real big problem in the last few years with debris on the sides of the roads. And one problem with that is, if the road isn't maintained properly, you can't get people to go and travel the road, which would stop the illegal dumping. Last year, through Clean Nova Scotia and some very dedicated volunteers in the community and the Department of Transportation too, whom did a very good job on this, cleaning this road up at a cost of $120,000. The road was cleaned up. And if you've seen the tons of material that come out of here, you wouldn't have believed it. And if you get something that's easy to access, go in there, you know there's almost no traffic on it because nobody will travel through it. It makes it very, very easy to go in there in the middle of the night or even in the daytime and dump garbage. The other problem with that road is it really needs to be finished and probably should be paved because it's a main connector between the two communities of East Preston and North Preston. Now when you go into North Preston, it's quite a long, windy road. You have to continue into the community and really the only access. Where if this road was finished and built properly, you could have easy access and make more connections between the families and in the two communities, whom many are related. And it's important to keep the family values and the availability of those things, those values in place, and a simple transportation road system would do that. In my area under the past government, there's only been one road paved, one road, and which was a government area. The Myra Road, which needed to be paved forever, was number one on the priority list in 1999 when I was in government. It took them 4 years just before an election to get the road paved. And hopefully it was done to a positive standard, but it didn't seem like there was very much asphalt laid, and it didn't seem like there was a very solid base on the road. We will see in the next year or so and see how the road stands up. But if that's the case, only one road paved in 4 years under this government in my area, I can't imagine with a member that's not a government member getting any pavement done. So although we will pressure the government to do just that, make sure we do get some work done in the community, which is so badly needed. I'm fortunate in one way with roads, because about half of my district is serviced by HRM, which is a higher standard of service than does a lot of the other areas in my area where the Department of Transportation does the work. And we have very few complaints from that area. A couple of complaints this winter about snow removal, and that's been about it. But the two standards cause problems too, with the province doing one lower standard than the municipality does, and people expect the one standard across the board, and they should deserve to have that same standard. I can give you an example of a 4-year-old problem that happened. There's a family in Lake Echo, when the road was paved through there, that had a lip left on the edge of a drop actually from the pavement to their driveway of some 8 inches. They contacted the Department of Transportation. Indeed, when I was councillor, I wrote to the engineer at the time and asked him to look at the problem, and he went and looked at the problem, said there's really no problem, and didn't repair it. The family's got bills where they had tow trucks to haul their cars out of the end of the driveway. They've got stuck there time after time. They put gravel on it themselves to try to cure it. but the water keeps running off the road and washing it away and causing a serious, serious problem. So with that kind of service, it's important that the service standards be set and service standards that people know when they call with confidence that a thing will be repaired, whether it's a pothole, street sign, whatever the case may be. There needs to be standards established to do these things. Possibly go into a standard call center that addresses these calls and forwards them out to the particular bases for the baseman and the supervisors to look into and resolve in an orderly manner, and reporting back system back through the supervisors in the department to make sure this work has been done in a timely and safe manner. The other issue I want to talk about is the tourism and the need for roads and tourism. If you don't have good roads in this province, you can't go to the beautiful areas outside the Halifax area that will absolutely guarantee people will return. But if you have a road that's so bad that your trip there is not enjoyable, you won't come back. And you'll tell all your friends when you go back to New England or to New Brunswick or Ontario that it's a horrible place to visit because the roads are so horrible. And that's a shame, and we all lose as Nova Scotians, because Nova Scotia has the best reputation for wonderful, friendly people and wonderful scenery. So we've got to make sure our roads are maintained and more money goes into roads, and make sure that every penny we get from the tax dollars from gasoline goes into roads and stays in roads and no other place. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Chester St. Margaret's.
Mr. Speaker, and I very much appreciate this opportunity. I understand I have 15 minutes, and certainly enough has happened in this House that people that usually have my last name could talk for days and days and days, and I think I've used that before in late night debate, but basically I don't intend to use more than 15 minutes, but I certainly do very much appreciate this opportunity. Of course, the spring is budget time, and indeed I think the budget, not everybody agrees on every sentence, but I think that many people in this, many colleagues in this House agree that there's far more good than bad in this debate. And certainly, and I read the budget highlights, and I haven't memorized the pages and pages of books, but one thing is it points out that the steady economic performance of Nova Scotia, that we really do have strong provincial revenues. And it's just amazing. After 40 years, we didn't have one, but in the last 3 years, Nova Scotia has a balanced budget. And that certainly didn't just happen because, oh, tomorrow we'll have a balanced budget. It's great planning and thought have gone into that. And of course, the thing is, of course, the surplus over last year of the revenues, the surplus over the expenses were $14.5 million. This may seem like a lot of money, but when you realize that to run Nova Scotia costs you $5.5 billion, and we have a $14.5 million surplus. And that's very good, especially, remember 2003, what a year it was. We had floods in the spring, we had blizzards, we had Hurricane Juan, and luckily Hurricane Juan didn't hit the whole province, but the parts it did, it certainly left its mark. And then of course in some areas too, we had the White Juan, that is much snow in a very short time. But we survived all that and still ended up with a surplus. That's, of course, good management. I think the other thing, too, that we've started a debt retirement fund, And that's the first time ever, and we put in all surpluses go into that account. And I know that what I understand, there's $10 million in this. If this budget gets passed, there'll be $10 million in it. 6 will retire the debt, and then of course $4 million will be contingency fund if we have any unexpected expenses. And indeed, we do have unexpected expenses. Nobody predicted we'd have a Hurricane Juan last year, And I think many people also appreciate we don't have to wait for another 100 years until it happens again. Of course, the gross domestic product for Nova Scotia is 3.4%. That's the growth expected this year. And it isn't just a conservative figure, small as large C conservative figure. It's done by a formula. And it's very often considered by many, many people accurate. And we are growing stronger and better, growing faster than many other parts of Canada. So that's another great thing to go ahead with. Of course, certainly people on this side of the House, and I think many people in the whole House, also appreciate that we have to do whatever we can to lower taxes. Isn't it arrogant for some government to come along and say, oh, I'll take all your money, I know it better than you do how to spend it. You don't know how to spend it any better than the people that actually gave you the money to do it. So the lower you're putting taxes, the better it is. Everybody, that seems like common sense. But some people say, oh no, spend it all, don't give them back anything. But basically, I think this budget very much reflects that 96% of Nova Scotians, 96%, 96 out of 100, will have lower personal income tax than they did last year. Okay, it isn't as low, it isn't low, if you make over $100,000, you have to pay that 10%, whatever, that's fine, whatever, because we couldn't predict everything. But we went in the right direction, and we want to keep up that direction and keep it up with balanced budgets. And my goodness, we have a plan. Thank you. my. Pretty emotional day, I tell you. Of course, I think the other thing is, I think everybody also appreciates that businesses have to be supported. And the more we support businesses in Nova Scotia, it's great. And of course, small businesses, their threshold went up to $300,000. It's in line with the tax rules in Ottawa, but we're going in the right direction. Went up from $250,000 to $300,000. So basically, of course, I think everybody appreciates, at least I'm sure on this side of the House, that all the businesses, we're not all Irving employees, we're not Irving, I should say, or General Motors, but basically, most 75% of businesses in Nova Scotia have between 1 and 5 employees. And so we certainly don't want to do something that would impede their keeping ahead and going ahead in that direction. So certainly, I think it's a very sensible budget for most businesses. Of course, the number one choice is what do we have as needs? And inevitably, people have, give me money for this, give me money for that, give me money for this. You can't run a sensible business or a sensible household or a sensible province if you give everybody all that they ask, because you have to be prioritized. And prioritize, we said, number one, health care. Number one, health care. And the budget has increased for health care in Nova Scotia and health promotions, etc., to $2.36 billion. Wow. Well, that's certainly a lot better than it was the year before and the year before and the year before. So, my, oh my. And the other thing is, of course, you can't do everything at once, but I think many, many people appreciate that seniors living in nursing homes will no longer pay for medical costs effective as of January the 1st, 2005. And I think this is a time, and many members around the whole House, both sides of the House, whatever, we all got up and said, hey, that's a good point. And certainly I think everybody appreciated that. Then, of course, it's certainly the funding for long-term care beds, pharmacare, ERs, orthopedics, provincial wait time projects, and we go on and on and on. These are the things that are getting concentration, and we're certainly going in the right direction. And certainly, just to say, we have certainly hospitals will receive $78.5 million more, and medical payments where people need medicine, etc. This is up $85.6 million. And the thing is that anybody that has the honor of being an MLA, often we're all aware of homes for long care. and basically they will receive $24.1 million more for doing those operations. Healthcare is our first priority. Second priority, education. And I'm sure I don't want to bore everybody with all the things that are going in education, and certainly we certainly realize that you have to support education, because we want people, as I think somebody said in the House here, we didn't want people to come to Nova Scotia when they're young, they get out their education, they leave the province, they work all their lives and come back here to retire. When they come back to retire, they should come back to see their grandchildren, because their grandchildren and everybody else should hopefully want to work and support Nova Scotia. And that's certainly the goal that you have to have. And you can't set it, oh, tonight we'll do this tomorrow. It has to have good planning, and we're doing in that direction. And certainly we've done a lot for families. Community services budget is up $27.7 million. Community supports for adults budget has increased by 10.3%. And I'm sure that everybody in this room can read just about as badly as I can, or good as I can, and read this booklet, because it's very, very important. And it's saying what we should be doing, and that's what we are doing. And of course, the one thing is, I think it's very, very important that we are paying down the debt. And I always get a kick of some people that say, we're increasing the provincial debt. We're increasing the provincial debt. But what they have not told you, and they haven't made you realize, that in 1999, the provincial debt was about 48% of all the money that all the assets the province of Nova Scotia owned. Now it's 41%. That was in 2003, and it's going down again, because we have to, by the year 2008, we'll have more money to go against that. Why is it? It's a bit, it's going in the right direction, because we have to have a plan to do it. And you can't do it overnight, but certainly this budget certainly has highlighted many of the things that we are going in the right direction with. And so we'll certainly go on that. Of course, another item, and how many minutes left do I have, Mr. Speaker? What did it start? Mr. Speaker, how many minutes?
You have approximately 3 minutes. 3
minutes. Oh, well, even a person with my last name can't stop in that time, whatever. I'll only run after you with some ideas. Okay. But basically, we very much appreciate the bill number 40. And I think many of the people sitting in this room were at one time municipal councillors. I was one, and I know many on our side and many on the other side too, municipal councillors, because I think it's very, very important that we have to have for Bill 40. And I'd just like to read the plan that we're using in this regard is that this party certainly supports. We protect homeowners from sudden and dramatic changes in property assessments by working with the Union of Nova Scotia Municipalities, UNSM, to establish a limit on yearly increases in cases where there has been little or no physical change to the property. That is our goal, and we're certainly very proud of that thing. And I don't think that goal goes against anybody else's idea. And basically, we have to come up with a real problem. You can't run away from a problem. You have to solve the problem. And, of course, everybody realizes, too, that municipalities, everybody that was a municipal councillor or has followed municipal the things going in municipal councils, is that they have a very dedicated task, too. And every municipal councillor says, yes, we have to give these goods, we have to have these revenues, we have to these goods, these services, in order that we do as well as we can. And inevitably, 55 municipalities in Nova Scotia, not all municipalities agree with everybody 100% of the time, but they really think they're doing as much as they possibly can with their limits. Of course, with their budgets. But of course, we all realize that they have to be, costs have gone up for giving the same services or more or better services, but the costs have gone up, and so will revenues have to do. So that is a very legitimate point. However, we can't ruin municipalities or ruin the province by having it so dramatically changed. But Mr. Speaker, I not enough time to do that, and I very much appreciate this opportunity, and thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you. The motion is carried.
Recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, would you please call the estimates of the Minister of Education?
The estimates for the Minister of Education. Minister, would you like to start with some opening comments? Okay,
Ready.
while we're waiting for staff.
Well, if they want to start by the time they get the question out, the staff will be here.
Okay. Well, the Liberal caucus has 52 minutes remaining in its hour, so I'll recognize the Honourable Member for Kings North. Kings West, I'm sorry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I do apologize. It was the member for Preston. But he's not here. Does another member of the NDP caucus wish to? Okay. The member for Kings West.
He wishes to continue, but it's okay. First question that I had for the minister today. One of the areas that is often brought, I know, to my attention when people hear or take a look at statistical information from the Department of Education is the actual graduation rate that we currently have in the province. And certainly when we take a look at the graduation rate and we see a figure of 80%, we know that, to certainly taking a first glance at that, that is what I would call a disturbing statistic, that only 80% of students who are in grade 9, 3 years later or 4 years later, we have only an 80% rate. So I was wondering if the minister would make some comments on that particular rate that we have in the province, and what in particular is being initiated to hopefully improve upon that graduation rate.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
It's an interesting question, Mr. Chair. In 2002, the 2003 actual graduation rate was closer to 82%. And I guess it reflects something, but that the percentage graduation by females was about 88%, and by males a little bit less than that, around 76%. I think there's some number of reasons for those, and I think probably you could speculate on them as well as I have. To be quite frank, there are some people who would see other opportunities and would be prepared to leave school to pursue them. There would obviously be some students, I expect, who, not a significant number, who actually move out of the school district and could actually be continuing on with their education at some other place. There are some people probably for whom what is offered in school is not that all that appropriate, and I think you have to keep in mind too that these numbers do include, I think, the entire school population. It's better, I think, probably now than it has been in my memory. That doesn't mean that, obviously the number we'd be looking for had 3 figures in it. Three whole figures or 100%. We're never going to reach that, but I think that the variety of courses and the variety of opportunities that are available in schools now, certainly there's a greater number of courses offered to students than there had been before, and that is a good thing. I think that the caliber of teaching, classroom instruction probably that goes on now is probably, our teachers, the young people that came in, get better and better and better, so teaching maybe, I think is better and will continue to improve, and therefore I think that's probably going to be a factor. I think as well that the recognition that not all students are going to go on and pursue a university career means that there will be different approaches used in the classroom. And I think individual schools, one of the things that I'm very concerned about and hope that we will be addressing as department, indeed I've spoken with the School Boards Association as well as the Nova Scotia Teachers Union, and more recently this morning I had a visitor in my office. We were talking about this, is that in some ways I think there's a gap in service that occurred when vocational schools were shut down. I know in my hometown of Truro, when I was at the high school there, the vocational school was next door, and there was a steady exchange between the students, and which worked very well. We have a marvelous community college system in our province now, which continues to evolve and develop and get better and better. But what happened was, when the community college system was put in, the bulk of the vocational system was pulled out, and there was no transition, and I think that's a problem, and it's one that the department recognizes, and we are turning our minds to. It will not be an immediate thing, but certainly we're aware of it, and I can tell you as well, and I think you know, that when the school boards did their series of hearings around the province last fall, that was either the number 1 or the number 2 concern. So I think something will happen because everybody is concerned about it.
The honourable member for Kings West.
Thank you very much, and certainly I'm pleased to hear that whole area of vocational training in our schools may in fact be one of the ways in which our students can be retained in the school and have higher graduation rates. Because really we're looking at over a 6-year profile. In 97, 98, we were at 79% graduation rate, and so therefore just the 1%, still at 20%, 1 in every 5 Nova Scotians not graduating in an age when we know that education is so important to futures, and we also know that there are some students whose needs in the public school do have great strains in order to be delivered. I would like to just follow up and ask the minister at this stage, I mean, would we be looking at models like we see at Memorial High School, where you have a high school and a vocational school that work in concert, or are we going to work more or move into more apprenticeship training? I'm wondering what are the kinds of areas, because I think it's an area that certainly some of our public school dollar is definitely going to have to go towards in the future.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Memorial was probably, I think in Nova Scotia, the only school that went to that particular model that I can remember, in which the vocational program and the regular or the non-vocational program were housed physically in the same building and students. I said there were other situations like the one with which I'm most familiar, where the vocational school was across the driveway. You didn't even have to cross the street. There was a driveway running between the high school and the vocational school, and that worked very well. In the Chignecto Central School Board, the school board in the new schools that I have provided there have incorporated into the design physical facilities for the OPP program, which is a good thing, but that's only part of it. We see, Mr. Chairman, probably more co-op programs or co-op programs where students are attending the academic courses part of the time and perhaps out working in business or industry, in areas where that is possible. I think that had a different name a number of years ago. If I remember, one of the names it was called was distributive education. And for those Metro members, you perhaps remember the big program they had in Dartmouth High and in Prince Andrew for the students over there. And that program disappeared. The other thing it's been mentioned and we're talking about with our skills development division is the idea of early apprenticeship. Rather than beginning an apprenticeship program in particular trades when you were still registered in a school. So I think there are a number of things that are possible. Do we have a defined plan at this particular time? No, we have the OPP programs in a lot of places which do fulfill a certain role, but they don't substitute for the old vocational school.
The honourable member for Kings West.
I want to come back to an area I know that was talked about on Friday, and that is testing. And just in particular, I wanted to pick up a little bit on the literacy test, which when I speak with a number of people across the education community, and I hear them say that perhaps we have the other end of the spectrum here, opposite of the grade 12 provincial exam, which certainly was a challenging exam, and perhaps the literacy testing, in other words, was a bit easy, and trying to perhaps show that things are all well, that we have the Learning for Life program in effect in Nova Scotia. We know that its impacts would be certainly down the road since it's a relatively new program. We did give a grammar book to every grade 4 student, and all of a sudden everything is right with the world. But I have a lot of concerns about the literacy test when you consider that only 11 out of the 60 outcomes that are part of the curriculum, certainly at the grade 5 level, when you only have 11 out of 60 that are actually measured on that particular test, I wonder, in fact, how accurately it is indeed measuring the state of literacy at the halfway point in our students' education. So that's just to frame the question, Mr. Minister. How accurately does that test reflect the ability of our students with literacy at about halfway point in their education?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chair, the does reflect grade 5, and members absolutely right. It's written fairly early in grade 6, and therefore would recognize that. I think it reflects it pretty well. Again, that test was made up by teachers, and you may be right about that. The number of outcomes that are measured, I didn't get into that detail in that, but it was made up by teachers working in the province, and they indeed felt that those were the most important things to measure. So we're pretty confident that the working group who was involved in the construction of this particular instrument were very, very competent, and I'm quite prepared to accept their judgment on that.
The Honourable Member for Kings West.
I guess I'll stick with this topic of the testing in our schools for a couple of more questions. I certainly, I guess, perhaps take a little different perspective. I believe that the testing of true value in our schools are how we stack up in the national forum. I believe that whether it's at grade 3 or grade 12, how we are measuring up to other jurisdictions across Canada is the all-important question. I firmly believe that we can't just take a look at whether we're measuring the outcomes and what the level is in Nova Scotia. We are now certainly in a position here where we have a lot of mobility, and our students at the end of the day do have to compete on the national stage. And I'm wondering if our time, our energy, resources, in fact, should be directed towards national testing only, and perhaps we have a review of our provincial and other areas of testing.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, I'm very pleased to hear the comments from the honourable member. He recognizes, I think, the value of testing and bringing our Nova Scotia students into a Atlantic and national and international comparison, of course, is where the department is trying to move and has moved the past number of years. So you will not get any disagreement, I don't think, from folks in the Department of Education that this is a good thing. I can tell you that in the language arts assessment, the National Language Arts Assessment, the last one that was done, including Nova Scotia, we were better than the other Atlantic provinces. We were not quite as good as some of the other jurisdictions in the country. In terms of our mathematics assessment, again, ahead of the other Atlantic provinces, not as good as some of the others. And one of the reasons for going to these provincial examinations is to address the concerns which you have articulated. You know, we've recognized for some time that, you know, we are competing globally, whether within this province or outside of this province. I want to say that if you take a look at the graduates of the Nova Scotia public school systems, we have some truly outstanding Canadian and world leaders, not to mention those who have made their mark here in Nova Scotia. So the danger in generalizing, saying that we don't do as well as Alberta, I guess the collective, this is not in any way to take or to not recognize the tremendous contributions and achievements of Nova Scotians. If you take a look in the sciences, some of our people have really, you know, the people that have been trained here and gone to school here are as good as anybody, any place. So I will say in terms of the national testing, yes. The other thing which is, I think, important to point out, Mr. Chairman, is despite the fact that our national results are not quite at the halfway mark, and I think this is what the honourable member is alluding to, and we will get there. We're making progress. We have the commitment of everybody, I think, in the province to go that way. When you take a look at our international assessments, we do very well. We rank very well internationally.
The honourable member for Kings West.
Just following along this line of testing and the provincial exams, I guess the results now with a little bit of a longitudinal vantage point there of 4 or 5 years, when we take a look at the extremely low results for physics, chemistry, the English communications, which I referenced on Friday as one other of the poor provincial results. I am wondering if what is the direction that the department is committed to. This is certainly, in terms of budget, a cost item, looking after the formulation, the administration, and so on of our provincial exams. We know a number of provinces now have moved away from provincial exams when they are a 30% component. We certainly have a number of reasons why perhaps the results aren't as good as they could be. I am simply wondering what is a bit of the future pathway that perhaps our exams are going to be taking in light of certainly cost factors and universities telling us that they don't really need the exams as part of their entry statistical base, really starts to point towards whether or not they indeed should be there.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Well, I think the issue is that a number of things, and you can understand what is a test used for. First of all, it enables students to show what they learn, show what they can do, and I think that's important. And it also enables teachers to use them as a diagnostic tool to try and determine what strengths and weaknesses of students are, and perhaps to adjust their instruction appropriately. The idea of consistency from grade to school, and we went through this, I think, on Friday, and we who were involved in that debate, and I guess there were about 4 of us that day, did more or less agree that what a grade might mean in the school from which you came might not be have the same meaning as the school next to you. And thus, when we have provincial examinations, means that we have a standardized curriculum across the province, because the exam does reflect what students are supposed to learn. It also enables us to compare. We have an objective way of looking at, for example, if we think that Alberta is doing a little bit better than us, and indeed they have on a couple subject areas, then we can take a look at what students in Alberta are required to learn and how well they are learning it, and we have our own documents to compare with. So I think more or less that is my understanding of it is that in Canada, you know, if a student is taking grade 12 chemistry, there is generally a theme of intended learning outcomes or things that students are expected to learn in grade 12 chemistry, whether they're in British Columbia or none of it, or in Nova Scotia. And you know, the provincial exams, and you mentioned those. We have chemistry, English and French, and we have 2 English exams and physics exams, and of course that's been joined by mathematics this year. Is that the success rate in those exams continues to grow each year, and that's the important thing. They set a standard, they set a bar, and it's an objective measure. You can see if you're going up or going down. And I think that is very important for our students and for our teachers to have that objective feedback. And the other thing, I suspect that the areas where these exams are written, we get into chemistry and physics and those things, rightly or wrongly, those and the advanced math in grade 12, those aren't general education courses anymore. I mean, the idea of general education, that isn't what they're intended for. They're intended really as a prerequisite for going on and studying that material further. And therefore, studying that material further, and therefore the objective measure is probably quite helpful.
The Honourable Member for Kings West.
This may be a little bit too specific in some ways, but I think it's it's telling when in the history of the English 12 communications, the minister's talking about improvement being made. Well, we've never had a passing average on that provincial exam to date. Now, if in my class, I went through, a set of exams, and over a couple of years in particular, and less than 50% were passing, there's time for change, there's time for remediation, renew the course, get the outcomes and the exam in greater sync. To me, something must be happening there, and I'm wondering if the minister could report, because I think exams in this province are a troublesome area for a whole number of reasons, and I hope maybe at some time to be able to expand on that. But I find that troubling, so I'm just wondering what specific is being done to bring the exams perhaps more in line with, in fact, what outcomes here should be measured.
The Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I would have to disagree with the honourable member in his assumption. And again, the information that I have and comes into the department, these tests are made up by teachers, and nobody really says that the tests don't measure what students are supposed to learn. And now, one can argue and say, well, they shouldn't have to learn those things, and that's a different argument, and I can't, I'm not prepared to debate that today. But the fact is that I think you're going to see those things go up, because the literacy program, although you write a grade 12 exam, literacy is the thing that we have for 13 years in school. And I was very encouraged by the results of the grade 6 literacy assessment, simply because it means that at least at that point in time, the great majority of students are meeting objectives. But additionally, and I expect somewhat in relation to the feedback that we're getting from these standardized exams, is that the province has committed a lot of human and financial resources to literacy programs, and as the honourable member knows, you don't get immediate payback on that, but over the course of years, I would suggest that you're going to see those results grow significantly.
The honourable member for Kings West.
Okay, Mr. Minister, to move in another direction here for a while. We know that we are hearing now, perhaps from all of our school boards, I know two in particular, that keep raising the funding formula for the education in their regions, in their district school boards, and with just 7 boards now to actually deal with compared to the old 23 board system. We've had another 5 years, and I think 3 during the previous administration to deal with our larger boards. Certainly, there's again a number of issues surrounding the funding, and I was wondering if the minister could comment on again, what is the timeline for doing some corrective measures to the present formula in view of the fact that there are some major issues.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, I thank you for that rather leading question. Clearly, his preamble indicates that there is a problem with the formula, and we know that there's dissatisfaction in some areas with the formula, but hopefully we have announced a review, Mr. Chair, and that review is going to be led by Bill Hogg, who most people in this House know, and for the honourable members' information, he was the former Deputy Minister of Finance and a very well respected Nova Scotian. So the timeline, he has pretty well just about started that project. This, by the way, was an agreement